planet, the effort to engage the almost 2 million associates globally, the hourly workers who work at Walmart. Now, raise your hand if you've been in a Walmart recently. Wow, so that's about 40% of this audience. I actually asked that same question in this room about a year ago, and the answer was about 5% of the audience. I don't know if something's changing. But even at 40% of the audience, you have to realize that we're kind of weird. Well, you probably could realize that anyway, but Walmart is the place where people buy things in America. As Paul mentioned, it's something like 125 million people shop there every week, something like 200 million people regularly, and roughly 89% of all Americans end up shopping there at least once a year. This is an American institution as much as the White House is. When I was first approached about working there, or working with them, I refused, because I hadn't been in a Walmart, and actually I had sort of snuck into one once because I was really desperate and there was no other store around. But I was embarrassed of it, so I didn't want to even admit that at the time. But I started hearing what they had set out to do, and they basically set out 3 goals. First, produce zero waste. Second, be powered by renewable energy. And 3, sort of sell only green products. And for the largest corporation on the planet, the largest corporation in the history of the world, to commit to those 3 things was sort of mind-boggling. I literally, when I began to conceive of what that would mean, I began to shake again, because I don't know. I mean, I've read all the books, but I don't think there's a book that says, how do you transform a $400 billion corporation? There's no model for it. It hasn't been that way. There's never been something as large. And I began to get more comfortable because I have to say there's a certain activist romance in the David versus Goliath story, and I've always tried to play the righteous David. But I began to get more comfortable with the odds of working with a Goliath and trying to figure out a way to get the spirit of a David in the heart of the Goliath. I first flew down to Bentonville, and I remember sitting in a kind of a conference room or a little auditorium, and they start every meeting out by doing the Walmart cheer. Well, you all know it, right? All right, so, okay, see, well, I'm not gonna make you do it. So, I was horrified, right? I mean, horrified, because first of all, I felt like, what do I do? Do I clap? If I clap, am I supporting them? Did I do this? So I kind of sat with my arms like this, and then I meekly clapped, and I felt weird. And then there's this part where, you know, there's a wall dash smart. That's called the squiggly. And when you get to the squiggly in the cheer, you do the twist. And I did that, and then I felt really lame, like I hadn't done it well. But I was eventually enamored by the people who work there. I mean, when you talk about a group of people, 1.3 million Americans, people who work in the US at Walmart, it's a cultural fabric. It's something absolutely incredible. And we started working with the very basic concept of saying, well, if we can make sustainability matter to these people, to these folks who live complex lives and have challenges every day, then maybe we can make it matter to the rest of the people who live in this country. If we can make it matter to 1.3 million, maybe we can make it matter to 200 million. Maybe we can make it matter to 300 million. It became a group of inventors collectively, and we worked together to create what we called the Personal Sustainability Project. The project was designed by associates themselves in Plainfield, Indiana, Broomfield, Colorado, and Tampa, Florida. And the heart of the project was a simple voluntary commitment that we called a PSP, a Personal Sustainability Practice. A PSP we defined as being smart, that it sustains the planet, it makes you happy, it affects the community, it's repeatable, it's something that's actually a practice, and that you're actually taking visible action. There's something happening in your life. So this could be biking to work one day a week, or parking in the spot that's farthest from where you're going, or changing your lights to CFLs, or caring for a park. My PSP is to make healthy breakfast for my kids every morning. My wife Lynn's PSP is composting. To get better at composting. Lee Scott, the CEO of Walmart, his first PSP was recycling, and now it's getting in shape for spring. And the associates of Walmart began to take it for themselves. There are roughly 10 captains in every Walmart store, in Sam's Club stores, so roughly 4,500 stores across the country, each of whom were initially given 4 hours a week to figure out what this would mean and to talk to their fellow associates about it. And after about a year, basically we're beginning the second year now, about 500,000 of those associates had a PSP that they could name and they were continuing. Something in their life that they were doing that was smart, that sustained the planet, that made them happy, that affected the community, that was regular and continuous, and something that was taking visible action for them. The behavioral idea behind PSP is a simple one that we call nano-practices. Nano-practices are the thousands of tiny things you do each day that make up your lifestyle. How you tie your shoes, the type of shoes you wear, your choice of socks, how you fold your socks, and whether you wear your shoes indoors. Instead of trying to change the big things about someone's identity, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican, whether they're a Hillary supporter or an Obama supporter, we start by finding daily or recurring practices that can express values. A personal sustainability practice at its most basic level is something that's a repeated action that's good for you, your community, and the planet. And initially, as my background is, we started focusing on strictly environmental PSPs, but we quickly learned that the environment was only an entrance point. I first met Jan Bennett in Broomfield, Colorado. She's a spiritual woman, quick with a smile. Her thinking, more than anyone else's, formed the ideas I'm sharing with you tonight. She's a Walmart associate, and she's originally from Mississippi and describes herself as a lifelong learner and was as excited as anyone I met about learning how sustainability works, what exactly is going on with our atmosphere, and how recycling can be a business driver. She volunteered to become a PSP captain and soon had almost everyone in the Broomfield store involved in the project. But if you really talked to Jan about what was going on in her life, she would tell you, God, I'm 75 pounds overweight, and that is not good for me. I've just been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, she says. And she told me, and I'm having trouble, she said, figuring out how to eat differently every day. That's what I've been told, and to take my medication just to remember to do it. And she said, what really matters to me is my daughter. I've somehow lost connection with her, and her daughter had recently told her that she didn't want to have kids because she just didn't want to. And this was what was going on in her life. And pretty soon, her recycling PSP moved on. And she told me that her next PSP was a diet. And I remember the conversation well because when she told me that, I actually was a little disappointed. Really? I thought it was pretty ordinary for this extraordinary person. And she said, what do you mean, really? Well, I just figured that, and I said it like slowly as if she couldn't hear, sustainability has to have something to do with protecting the earth. And she sort of patted me on the shoulder and gave me a little kind sigh. Where do you think all that food is coming from? And what about sustaining me so I can sustain my family? You'll figure it out, she said. This humble woman taught me more than I can explain. And it's not just the associates who've gotten involved, it's their families. Amanda Adler, she's 8, her mom, Ruth, works at Walmart in Vancouver.